Start.
Yeah.
Okay. How long have we had?
So good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, Milan.
So, I'm going to start today with, for everyone who's joined in, with introducing Bhavani, Dipender Bhavani. He's a multidisciplinary designer, thinker, and teacher, and the founder and managing director of Lemon Design, an integrated design studio based out of Pune with a primary focus on design thinking and its application through humane design methods to create holistic systems and designs for brands, products, services, experiences, self-sustaining habitats, and microcultures for creating value. He's also a national award winner and speaks at various conferences like the CII Design Summit, India Design Forum, and other conferences on design thinking. His list of accolades is pretty long. We might lose time if I run through all of them. But one of his biggest contributions to our industry in particular has been his and his team's involvement with the design and execution of IIJS, which is a monster exercise, and they do it quite seamlessly. I've personally worked with him on several projects, and he brings a unique holistic approach, which is quite refreshing. So over the last few days, I'm sure you guys have had several conversations and webinars, on the council's platforms on business, mining, retail, all the problematic stuff. And it can be a bit overwhelming and, in terms of the amount of information that is coming in from the outside. Today, through our discussion with Dipendra, we hope to touch upon areas that we normally don't have the time to discuss, about how all these changes that we are undergoing right now will have, longer lasting psychological, spiritual, and, all kinds of changes internally and in our businesses and in the way our consumers and customers do business. So I'll let, Bhavani take over now, and, he's going to run us through his ideas and his thoughts through this entire thing, and then we can get into questions and a little bit of more discussion. Bhavani, I'll let you take over.
Thank you, Milan. Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. So I just want to get straight to the point in the sense, we sort of have, I don't think if 3 months back, somebody told us that, you'll have to sit at home one day, we would have thought that it would be as it is today. We would have said, oh, there'll be riots and there'll be chaos and everything. But I think most of us have taken it. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are not at home yet. They're displaced, the migrants. And of course, there has to be ways of sort of reaching out to them. And I think there are large communities working towards that. And I think but what this sort of phase in our life has really brought us to a very interesting thing. We've always referred to our species as the human race. I've always wondered, what are we racing towards, or what are we racing for? We've had this discussion many, many times. In fact, in the course of our work and, knowing each other, we've gotten into these discussions. But I think really now is, we've somehow, the universe has given us this thing, stop, just wait. There's a time for sort of Atma Manan, or this sort of self, or this introspection. And I think, it's a time that we've looked always outwards. We've always looked towards everything outwardly, looked at materialism, looked at growth, looked at the tangible physical spaces around us, and just seen what I get out of it, not what's gone into making it. And I think for this, I'd like to sort of dwell a little bit on the history, okay, because it's extremely important to understand why we really got here. And as a designer, we delve a lot into human behavior. It's ultimately about human behavior and what kind of behavior we are able to sort of promote as designers, And when I started my career, it was really first understanding the tricks of the trade, the industry, and how the markets work. Because in design school, it's very utopian and it's very sort of flurry and everything. But over time, I realized that there are certain flaws I felt with the entire system, There's sort of monotone, or this monologue of urbanization, globalization, everyone wants to sell to everybody else, this overall way of looking at one pattern of growth or one pattern of value, I think was a really fundamental problem. After the World War, we got a chance. We chose the mass production path. Okay. Until today, we're reeling with that whole mass production attitude. And these are the attitudes, I think, that have also led us to this point in time. COVID is a great example of our doing. Whether or not we like it, it's our own doing. We've displaced animals, we've displaced environments, we've just looked at what is looking good in my own home, my own office, my own people. That's it. And I think that's a problem. And I think so. This value has to be redefined in some ways. Okay, and that's mass production has also sort of taken away. It's destroyed a lot of stuff. It's taken away local cultures, local economies, local products, local things. Everyone's got the same old plastic stuff, And I think also this has sort of led to this sort of one monologue of development and progress. Everyone thinks progress is this, development is urbanization. It has therefore created this huge sort of divide, okay? And that was hyper-normalized. When we say, will things go back to normal? I don't want it to perhaps go back to normal. I think it was hyper-normalized. It was made to seem that, it's okay. That's how it happens. Arey yaar, survival hai. And I think that is wrong. Everything was about me, human-centered design, human-centered this, human-centered this. Okay, we don't care about where we're mining, what we're taking away the water from. We are just concerned about what we need what we want right now, not even what we need. So I think that is one of the main contexts of this problem. And today, if you look at it, we've hit a war-like scenario. Economic disruption, people. Okay, it is a war, and thank God it's not such a destructive war, but it could get there. And if you look at the history of pandemics, they've always sort of turn things around, the Spanish flu, we have to rethink our behavior. And one of the evident things that we didn't realize, we call food, water, shelter basic needs. Today, technology is a basic need. You and I wouldn't have survived if this wasn't there, So these are changing. These are going to change. We have to adopt them. We may not like it. We may like it. We may get into discussions of the merits and demerits. But the fact of it is there to stay. And nothing is good or bad per se. How you use it is really what makes a difference. So putting this context, I think we need to understand what this sort of psyche or this norm sort of led us to do. Okay, one is it ate away the local growth and prosperity that that was anyways a part of all cultures, not just India, not just, every culture had its own. Now they've suddenly, brands are the beliefs, everyone wants the, I'm not going to name anything here because, it just doesn't serve the purpose. But moving on from there, okay, another point I want to talk about is the result of this, okay? The result of this is, and I think largely design has contributed a lot to consumerism, okay? And I think in the beginning, we grappled a lot with that till we sort of realized that, we want to make a holistic difference. A lot of stuff, it's created disparity. Look at the kind of wealth disparity. Look at the kind of division we have. It's just experience, political, economic experience. It's not serving most of us. Okay. So there was a fundamental law or rule that every management sort of theory teaches you, which is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I have a problem with that as well. In the sense, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it says first you need food, water, then you need shelter, then you need love, then you need belonging, then you need, your self-actualization is where you can practice your own sort of passions and stuff like that. That's so unfair. And in a way, if you look at it, markets have arranged themselves that way. So our psyche, our mentalities, our models shape society. And I think that is fundamentally where we need to move away from human-centered. Hierarchy of needs are holistic. If I give you food and water, but I don't give you respect, that's not fair. It's happening, but it's not fair. Everybody, whether you're poor, rich, you're of one religion or of one sex, if you do not have everything holistically, you are not that's not what human beings need. Okay, so we may have material needs, but we also have emotional needs, and I think largely we have focused around material needs with this whole consumerism. And I think, the brands that realize it, okay, will soon and have always made a difference. I think, and this is where we really need to go back to our jewelry tradition, you know, because value for us, okay, was always about intrinsic value. It was being passed on. It was an investment. Okay. Today, yes, jewelry has taken the form of luxury. It always was luxury, but it always was also very strong in investment. Today, I think because of the social distancing today, because of COVID today, because of physical interactions going to have to reduce. Okay, and I don't want to be pessimistic or optimistic, but there are people who are saying 1 year, people are saying till 2024 we're going to be feeling the effects of this. Okay, and I think this is an opportunity. We have a lot of inefficiencies in the way we work. Today, you and I realize that we're working better. We're having meetings for 4 hours, six hours are not getting wasted traveling. Imagine the amount of pollution we inhale. Look at this. Jalandhar is getting snow-capped mountains. I mean, where?
Yeah.
What planet do we live on? It is a beautiful sight of the planet that we have been shown. And I think we can not go back to that other normal. It was not normal. I think we need to create a better way. We need to understand how we can make things more efficient. Okay, how we can move away from ego and maybe create timeless things, not things that are used and thrown away. Okay, and I think one more impact of this whole sort of globalization, consumerism, and all of this, okay, is the fact that we have lost our skills. Everyone's computer savvy. Okay, today I teach. Okay, and students don't know how to work in a workshop. And I feel sad. Okay, we fortunately were at a time where computers were not even there, and we came into a time while I was at a college. NID's blessed me a lot, and I've learned a lot. And I think there are so many good design institutes now that are sort of teaching the same values. And I think Indian design per se is at a very interesting phase. And being a part of the design community, it's so amazing because the design community has recognized this very quickly. The whole design community is today talking about handmade in India. Okay, and I think jewelers, especially, we've forgotten that tradition. We went into that race of mass production. Okay, but I think this is the time to really dig into our roots, dig into our family traditions, dig into what we really did best. Okay, number two, I think, look at the jewelry tradition of India for thousands of years. Every region is so pretty and so beautiful. And the funniest thing, 60 to 70% of these guys are poor, of our population is poor, and they are artisans and farmers. They are the guys who have been creating all of this stuff. Okay, they've been marginalized. They've been said rural economy. They have been forced to leave their jobs and their skills, their craftsmen. Their kids don't want to do this anymore because we don't appreciate it anymore. We want to have that fancy t-shirt with the fancy brand or the fancy logo that is recognized in social circles. I think that's going to change in any case. Work cultures are going to change. We're not going to meet so often. So we're going to even look at how precious and non-precious things, so much beautiful jewelry, okay, is made out of completely non-precious things. Okay, there are great designers who've been doing this and working on this for years now. Okay, and they've been talking about it, and I think now it's going to come into limelight. Okay, because see, in India we've got such beautiful skill and values and manpower. Okay, and I think we've sort of treated them badly. If you look at the urban culture, okay, we've treated them badly because the migrants, the way they've been treated lately, look at it. They're stuck, food, just basic respect of what they're going through, and it's sad. And we are fortunate, we're sitting at home, we can get some extra food. They don't even probably have a bag to keep that extra stuff here. So what are we talking about? And I think this is the time for us to really think. We have not lost much. We thought that, oh, अगर जो एक दिन कमाई नहीं होगी, एक महीना कमाई नहीं होगी, तो हम लोग मर जाएंगे. ऐसा नहीं हुआ. ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं हुआ. बल्कि we've reached out to each other. we've exchanged ideas, we've suddenly opened our minds. So I think this is the universe's way of telling us to ascend. It's
Yeah.
forced us into this ascension. So yeah, I mean, these are some of the issues that we have to deal with.
So, something I picked up while, you were saying all this, that this is essentially a time for us to simplify things, obviously in our personal life as well as at business, simplify to a certain extent, and at the same time use available technology to become more efficient. So this is a great blend. This is a great opportunity for us to actually, uh, you know, have both minimalism, simplicity, and tech and e-commerce
I
and
think
all these
this
things
is the
kind of
time to
coexist.
incorporate tradition with tech.
Yeah,
Tradition with tech, and I think that's where the future will be. The guys who take it on, the guys who innovate there. Okay, I think those are the guys who will make the real difference. So now enough of problems. If you just look at the opportunities in front of us. I mean,
yeah.
I work with this friend of mine. He's a mentor, he's a guide, and he's also a partner. Okay, we are trying to build this sustainable lifestyle, and from him I've learned. He said he talked of a very simple idea of Sahaj and Mahaj. You know, they're doing some really amazing agricultural work and holistic habitat. They want to create a Gandhian village, okay, but with a new
Yeah.
set of values, with technology, with all of that. And I think if you look at it, the greatest mind in our time, Gandhi, had given us these clues 50 years back, 60 years back. You know, so we're not doing anything new. All of the designers were really talking about the same thing: self-governance, handmake, or self-reliance, or Swaraj, which is self-governance, or Swavlambhan, which is self-respect. So what
So
are we
also,
really?
so these are emotional values and community values that you think
And they're
will,
work values. They can very well
as
be
well as, yeah.
translated into work culture.
So just a disclaimer so that people don't think that we think that only uh, you know simple small businesses are the way of the future. It is that is not the case. There will be obviously opportunities for large businesses and for India to live its make in India kind of potential. But this is just another way of looking at our business. Just a clarification. Uh, yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. So in fact, bigger businesses, the biggest opportunity for them is to just look at their own communities, their own regions, just develop that, just divide those communities, collaborate with them. If corporate and industry and the maker and the sort of the creators, okay, which is the design community, the crafts community, the artisan community, okay, the village, if imagine the city is able to so let's say every city, their urban capital has the responsibility for their entire district or that region, that you have to take care of that rural environment. Okay, what if we don't look at just economic prosperity? What if we look at environmental, not just
yeah.
responsibility, but a sort of happily I want to do for the environment. It has to be happiness, joy of doing for the environment, joy of doing for society, not a
So
give and take.
a lot more respect for the artisan, the craftsman, giving them uh, you know an opportunity to really kind of just go beyond just doing the simple, uh, you know just do what they're
They
doing
can't
on
be
a daily
laborers
basis.
anymore.
Yeah. So
They
it can't
shouldn't be
be, yeah,
laborers anymore. They are the guys who are making this stuff. Make them a stakeholder.
because the jewelers
Win with
in the
them.
West, though, like in Italy or Germany, a goldsmith or a jeweler has tremendous, respect.
Look at those brands.
Yeah, and
They make
they're
few
empowered.
pieces, but they're beautiful. They're luxurious goods. Plus, but I don't think design should only work on one end of luxury. It should also work for the masses. Change that lifestyle, because there are companies like Brown who have shown us that philosophy. Make timeless products. Right now, people are designing products so that 1 year later they are outdated. That's not
Yeah,
fair. That's just
yeah,
not fair. And I think those are the brands that need to be threatened, you know, who are not really creating value, but are just creating variation,
yeah. So a lot more thrust on
substance.
using available skill sets and creating new ideas, original ideas from that. You mentioned, things like timelessness, hand skills, India, make in India, luxury, tradition. All these things are synonymous with our industry. I mean, with the jewelry business. I mean, it's
In
almost
fact, you guys were the
uncanny.
Sone ki chidiya. You guys are what made us the Sone ki chidiya. The jewelry tradition, okay, is what really gave the world that image of Sone ki chidiya for India.
Correct.
Look at our
So
culture, and it's all rooted in our culture, our craftsmanship, our artisans, our techniques, those materials, those the sort of geography of that place has defined the shapes of that place, the materials.
so
We've forgotten that. We've gone to
if
all plastics, all mass manufacturing.
if you could give everyone an example of how one could say collaborate or collaborate better with the artisans, in the sense, what would be, in your opinion, an ideal collaboration? Because today, if any business is to create a new product, generally the promoter or the director of the company would get some form of recognition. Very rarely do artisans kind of or the artistry get any kind of limelight. Not that they're looking for limelight. What I mean is, what, in your opinion, would be their what would motivate them? I mean, if you had to collaborate with,
If I was a jeweler, I can just sort of put myself in that situation. Today, what I'd be looking at is, in this region, okay, what are the different kinds of crafts that have been there? Okay, how can I contribute to those communities if I make their lives better right now? Okay, and because they are suffering right now as we speak. Okay, if I can make their lives better, okay, they will in turn become my stakeholders. They become partners. Create a round table scenario. Don't create a conference table scenario where there's a head of the
correct,
table
correct.
and everyone is the, so make them equal stakeholders. Obviously, there's a huge effort going into creating platforms that entrepreneurs and businessmen do. Okay, a lot of times creators feel that हमने बना दिया तो सब कुछ हो गया, and that's wrong.
Yeah.
It has to be an equal table, equal, no hierarchy, holistic. Fight, bash it out, argue. There's no hurry. Come to a conclusion. The problem is we are in a hurry, immediate gratification. Har cheez, everything, growth is mapped through time. Okay, and that's what we don't realize the consequences of that time. We have estimated a time. So I think slow down, because it becomes more precious when you slow down, because the quality of it gets better. If your people are happier and prospering, why would they go to somebody else? We can have a trickle down effect. It shouldn't be, अरे उधर से material ज़्यादा अच्छा मिल रहा है तो उधर से ले लो, अभी इधर के vendor को छोड़ो.
Yeah.
Make it work, because they are the people who are going to help you. They are going to work with you. Okay, and how much can you eat finally?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's everyone's appetite is different.
I know,
so
true. But I think that
that's...
we really need to think like that. We really need to ask ourselves, this is that time for introspection. It's been forced down our throat, but we are all introspecting. So I think...
So do you think this collaboration with local Indian crafts and arts, or even your, artisans that one has in their factory, do you sense, with the whole global situation right now, that this could actually be a moment for India to take this, because there is a wave of Indianness,
chance,
right? There is a wave of Indianness, where we can actually take all these things, all these skills, all these values, and project it, collectively on a larger scale. Do you think what would...
so long in the waiting? I totally agree with you. This is our moment in history. India can really show to the world. We should dig into our roots, dig into our people, invest in our people. Okay, why do we need so much of that sameness?
Yeah.
Why do we need that status quo? Why can't we celebrate our uniqueness? Focus on, I mean, I don't think we really need to rely too much on import. We have so much. If we just start appreciating it today, tomorrow, the world, Milan, is going to be at home. Half our world is going to be at
So
home. You see in my house today.
fortunately for at least our industry, jewelry imports are kind of disincentivized. So in that sense,
No, correct. No, but
we're
I'm just
quite
talking
secure.
pan industry, because jewelry is not going to remain jewelry anymore. I feel it's going to have to work with technology. Because imagine if this was your style statement today. We were just discussing, "Arey yaar, mere ko aur acha
Yeah,
headphone lena tha."
yeah.
Imagine this. This is the jeweler's opportunity. Imagine these things. Okay. The other thing is, today, because we are not going to be facing each other physically, those physical interactions, shadis and things like that we'll have. Udhar par our precious jewelry, our investments will really be of value. But in scenarios like this, it'll probably it could be other non-precious material.
So
It could
if I
be other things.
take a hook from what you're saying, in terms of communication, given that over the next, it's quite conceivable that over the next year, trade shows or physically meeting customers or getting an opportunity to, show your products to customers might, might not be as easy. Those opportunities may not be as many. Um, how can the industry use, available solutions to overcome these limitations in a short to midterm, such as trade shows, physically meeting a customer? Your showroom is probably inaccessible, or people will not want to come. Obviously, the standard answers will be website, e-commerce, and things like that. But jewelry retail is not only about walking into a store. There is also other elements. It's a very personal business. How can we continue to keep that engagement level in these times of distancing?
See, social distancing doesn't mean don't meet the people at all, I feel. So we'll have to curate those meetings. We'll have to, I think, so yeah, you said the website is the obvious answer. But I think, our culture, we're just dig deep. Okay, go back to our jewelry tradition. Johri jo hota tha, wo ghar pe aata tha.
Yeah.
There's your answer.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but the problem is now we've gone into this retail branded environments and the stereotypical experiences, which we inherited from the West. We thought that our tradition is bad and we left that and we went there. And now, that was never sustainable in the first place. Okay. It was too expensive. So you have that, you'll have some of that, but you'll have to do a lot of, like you guys do some amazing stuff with your brand, your trunk shows. What is that?
Yeah.
That is exclusivity. That's one end of things. And then you can create the same environment virtually. Let people tell you, because in your industry, there's a lot of theft of ideas and stuff like that. But the other thing I'm thinking now is, it should go beyond idea. It should go about craftsmanship and quality. Ideas should become open source. If you figure out something now, tell everyone how to do it, but you do it better than them. And I think that's where the race is, so capitalism is a bad thing. Capital is not a bad thing.
Yeah. So
that I learned from this friend of mine this morning. He told me that isms are the bad thing. By idea, social is not a wrong thing, but socialism or fascism or racism is when you make it into this fanaticism. Then we become fanatics and we become dogmatic. We don't want to change our opinion. I think so. We just be open.
Okay, so I'm going to let some questions that are coming on the chat. It seems like some people were expecting it to be a conversation about design. It's actually about design thinking. So, Bhavani, if you could, in short, just explain the difference between design and design thinking, so it's clear to everyone who's on.
Okay.
On
actually, design and design thinking are not very different, but they've changed their meaning right now. Design has become more visual aesthetics. In the current scenario, the definition of design is actually aesthetics, but design is actually a way of thinking. Okay, you do it. Okay, you may not actually be a designer, but you in your organization, the way you are able to take things what seemingly unconnected but connect those things is what design thinking is. It's a way of thinking in which you don't prioritize one thing over the other, but rather look at how a juggler juggles balls.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you
So
get
it's
that
all of it.
rhythm,
It's
and
not
that's
only
what
the
an
product.
entrepreneur does. I don't know of a single entrepreneur who I don't feel is a great designer, or any talented person who's good at his job is, in my view, a designer and does design thinking. Okay,
So it's
design
not
is
only
being
about
made
jewelry
into
designing, but it's all of it. It's the store, it's the
कैसे आप
packaging, it's
मैन्युफैक्चर
the
कर रहे
product.
हो, कहाँ से आपने लिया,
Correct.
उसको कैसे वो सप्लाई चेन, क्या योर स्टेक होल्डर आपका पार्टनर है कि वो सिर्फ सप्लायर है. So right from your why of being there to the how you do it to the what you do, everything is design.
Yeah, got it.
Not just the look and feel. The end of Kisly, there's a very famous guy called Buckminster Fuller who said, I just try and solve a problem. If it doesn't look good, I know it's wrong. You know, so looking good to must hai na. वो तो if
Yeah.
you do solve a problem nicely and you take care of it, it does look good by the end of it. Looking good is not really the main game. Okay, it is just a consequence of what design thinking can do.
So another question that we have is this is Mr. Mehta. He says his clients don't want to buy real diamond and gold because they don't want to take care of it on a daily basis. How do we address that? There is that option of inexpensive jewelry, but is there a way communication to all of this that you mentioned, that we can change this mindset? You did touch upon all of it in some ways, but is there a way we can change this mindset where people would finally want to own real diamond and gold jewelry? Obviously, currently gold rates are giving great returns, so there may be already some one investment driven reason, but is there anything else that we can do to change this mindset?
See, earlier gold and jewelry, precious jewelry, had become both investment and optics. Today, I think the optics part of it will become lesser. People will still invest in jewelry, but first they will look for their own main needs, their basic needs. So there'll be skepticism in doing luxury spending, I feel. But if they are doing luxury spending, it will have to be timeless products. It will have to be timeless. Wo quality, wo uski value over time. Okay, so I think there will be opportunity for both. Okay, but I think there'll be a greater opportunity now in reinventing non-precious things into precious brands, into valuable things. Because today, society is going to come more into your home now. Your home is going to be a reflection of you. You're going to be talking more to people from your home, what you're wearing, what your home looks. And I think that's such a beautiful place to get in this quality.
That's a very interesting angle. That's certainly very interesting, because your home is a reflection of you.
Opportunity to decorate homes as well now, so I'm saying it just don't limit it to precious material and metals. Okay, and the community around you knows how to create this joy and beauty of having things at home, portraying your personality through your home, your clothing, and that will come up. Apparels will change.
So it's almost like personal branding, and how jewelry can be a critical part of personal branding.
Yes, obviously. And technology integration,
So that would require one to understand the customer a lot better and on a more deeper level, not just superficial.
You can't sell them something for 1 year and expect them to come back next year because the trend has changed. At least for some time, I think trends will take a back seat and timelessness will take the front seat.
So that kind of answers another question that we had from Karan. And that was, what is the number one biggest change we will see in jewelry design post this crisis? I mean, I'm assuming he's asking, do you think it will, I mean, what direction do you think jewelry design will move towards?
I think one is definitely the upper part of the body, you know,
Yeah.
at least for the foreseeable future. But I think, jokes apart, I think there's a huge trend toward making wood look amazing jewelry, stones, grass. Okay. And I think the masses are the big potential. Okay. To create maybe not very expensive stuff, but to
Yeah.
people would want to that will keep changing, you know, that habit of change, of different, I think will still be there. But I think people will end up wanting cheaper, or not cheaper, that's a very bad word. They'll want more value for, or more benefit or more value from that purchase.
But
They'll want that sort
in
of.
terms of design, I'm saying in terms of aesthetic, I think that's more his question, that
I think
what
the material will govern the form, the shapes.
okay.
You know,
Okay.
what I can do in wood, I can't do in stone. Maybe, or I don't know. I can't say. In fact, there are some very interesting concepts where you make wood look like stone or stone look like wood. I don't know. You guys, I mean, in fact, the NIDs and institutes, a lot of other institutes as well are working on this. We are doing some webinars and courses online. Okay, where
Yeah.
we want to do this. I've spoken to you whether you'd like to be a part of that, and
Yeah.
we need to do that. Industry and designer has, or creator, not designer, the creative community and the masses, everyone has to work together. Okay, it has to be win-win for everyone.
So we have, you know, someone, Urvashi, who has, you know, sent a comment that says that, because you mentioned that you believe in moving away from mass production for jewelry and creation of only timeless products. So given that India has to create so many jobs, you know, she says, I understand that the timeless products are valued way higher and are unique. However, I believe that a country like India cannot survive only on timeless pieces. They will need mass production in order to meet demand and make a significant insured profit. So again,
why mass production? Why is that the only answer? Cottage industries, there are so many. Get them involved in it. No, small and medium scale industry. Large ही नहीं क्यों करना है? Everyone doesn't need the same solution. What you need in Gujarat, you don't need in Himachal. You don't need in Bengal or Northeast. You know?
yeah.
So I
This
think,
may be also more, the question may also be more from an export industry point of view, which is, you know, again,
go
I
niche.
think the difference,
Go niche.
the difference being that as a factory, one can produce someone else's designs for their specific markets. We're talking more about, you know, original concepts coming out of India for Indians to consume, and maybe also for, you know, lovers of Indian styles and Indian, you know, arts and crafts anywhere in the world. So just once again to you know, yeah, once again to kind of differentiate between the two businesses. There is obviously a business of OEM where we are producing as a country product for another culture and another country, and there is product that originates from India, and this is, the conversation is probably more on that. Am I correct, Bhavani?
Yeah, I'm getting it.
Yeah.
So see, I feel that if mass production needs to happen, it needs to serve universal problems. So yes, I think, but I think when you're talking about personality and you're talking about those things, it cannot be done mass produced. I can't mass produce. And, you know, I think mass production in a way for me is a problem. And I understand that the lady Urvashi, she's probably talked about this, because I understand that a lot of industry has invested in mass production and things like that. But I think that now needs to be looked at, how does it serve the larger community, and what can their activities therefore be to serve that larger thing, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think it's too heavy. It's too big an elephant in the room, mass production, because the costs of maintaining it are too high, you know. So I think that is also one of the fundamental flaws, that we've built over capacity. We really want to sell to everyone in the world, and I think maybe that needs to change. I don't have a solution for mass producers yet, but I'm sure that if you brainstorm, everything has a solution, you know. How they can start sort of working in this sort of an environment and scenario. Okay. I think, you know, there's a lot of standardized things that
Yeah.
need to be made. You know, there will be a lot of standardizations. Okay. If you know, in the coming future, because of the way we've become as a global society. So I think that's where a lot of that can happen. Large corporates really can contribute there, you know, where they're working as a part of that entire cycle rather than the person who's gaining from that entire cycle the most.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I think it's a different discussion altogether. Who do you think, Mr. Sanjay Kothari has a question. He's obviously very deeply associated with the Skill Council of India, and he's just messaged us on the chat right now that who do you think should take the onus of promotion of Indian heritage jewelry and kind of all these values that you spoke about throughout? Who would take
firstly,
the
each Indian.
Okay.
Everyone. Okay. I think the design community is all gung-ho about it. I know that for sure. I know I am. Many people have been, my seniors have been working for many years. Okay. But the thing is, I think there's a certain disconnect between industry, design, you know, the value each one provides is ambiguous. Okay. And if you're able to work out a win-win situation, and you know, there's a thing of skills, which is upskilling. And I think that's another mass production of skills. That's wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Unique skilling is what we need to be looking at. You know, a student of mine taught me that. He asked me this question, you know, why upskilling? Why not unique skilling? And I think that's where a lot of these answers will lie.
That's quite interesting. Unique skilling is quite, yeah. Also, you know, all these years when we are designing in our industry, we're either designing for the Indians, or we're designing for the Chinese, or we're designing for the Americans. So design was always about designing for a nationality or a geography. Over time, obviously, with platforms such as Instagram and Facebook, there's been convergence of some sort of trends globally. However, there's also been development of very focused groups, like people in India or in the West or in the East behave and choose in a certain way. I mean, they're very similar. So do you see a shift from now designing for a geography to designing for a demography? When I say demography, I mean for the young or old, or something like that, or designing for a psychography, because 50-year-old today is much younger than a 50-year-old was earlier, and that lifestyle choices could be similar to someone who's 25. So how do you think this progression is taking place when it comes to design?
So I think I just want you to repeat that question a bit, because there was a lot of things you spoke about in it. Okay? So one is the demographics and the other is the psychographics.
First, we were designing for geographies, for nationalities, right? Then obviously you can design for a demography, like an age bracket. But now we're seeing convergence of trends globally.
Okay.
Is it there is a commonality between
so
everyone?
In design, there's a very interesting concept called, what's the use of it? Usage.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be usage that is going to govern it, because globally we have become a global culture. Okay. And if you look at it, we more or less today eat similar things. I'm obviously talking about a small mass of people, because there's a mass that's not, but they're influenced by this sort of 5%, 10%. Okay.
Yeah.
But I think on one hand, there'll be this global culture of behaviors, of usages, but in that it has to be hinted with demographics and unique cultures. So everywhere there's that uniqueness. If we don't do that, everything will become again staid and bland, you know. So the way it will happen in Thailand and the way it'll happen in India and the way it'll happen in US will be different, but the usage of it will be the same, you know.
Got it.
But maybe,
Got it.
you know, so I think it's obviously a very interesting sort of subject, and one really, I think as a designer, there are two aspects to one is
If
the
you can give an
functional part of
example,
it.
if you can just give an example, Mr. Hygrieve wants to know if we can give an example of how usage could be applied into jewelry design.
So I think look at the habits of people soon. Okay, everyone will probably be having, I'm just speculating, everyone will have a lot of headphones or earpods or whatever, right? Now
Yeah.
imagine if that itself is a usage and habit now. Okay, that's an opportunity for jewelry, okay, in my view. Okay, especially when you talk of clothing, so that my thing doesn't fall. Now, can I give a brooch, for instance? So that usage will become fixed. Okay, that clip, let's say, I don't know, I'm just giving you very lame, probably stupid example. Okay, but it doesn't fall now. Okay, so
Yeah.
one is that. Okay, but the Indian guy will, the guy who likes ethnic Indian, this thing will like that. Somebody will like, I love New York. I don't know, kya hoga uska. But the usages will start developing.
And the second part of the question is, and can you give an example of how can design be as a way of life? How design as a way of life? You know, you mentioned that earlier. How can that? Can you give an illustration?
Design has one
simple
premise, okay, which is in a lot of ways very similar to spirituality. I know you asked me not to touch too much on spirituality, okay, but I think, you know, it's about decisions being made out of fear, doubt, and skepticism is one choice, and the decisions made out of love and compassion is the other choice. Okay, so I think this is what I mean by way of life. Okay, if we are in a hurry, if everything, see, design is about not creating an answer. Till now, everyone, you know, you have a problem, let's find an answer. In design, there is no answer. There are many solutions. Then you find the one that works for the best and works for everyone, works for the environment. Okay, that's a more difficult way. Okay, but I think good entrepreneurs have always taken that more difficult route. You know, they have always made the more difficult choices and not the shortcuts. Okay, so I think that's what I mean when I say design is a way of life, where you sort of think before you act. It's not about knee-jerk reaction. It's not about being reactive.
more pre-mortem rather than post-mortem.
You know, Sweden, I believe, I can't quote for sure, but there's a company, I think a Scandinavian company, that does not allow most of its designs to be out before 1 year of gestation, because it says, I don't know what problems I may think of later on that I may not have thought on the first couple of days of articulating the problem, you know. So I think those attitudes, and it leads to very great examples like the factory. This friend was telling me that he'd gone to the factory and they'd gone slightly early. They'd reached 8:30 ke jagah 8 o'clock. So they parked right next to the gate and walked almost 1.5 kilometers to the factory. So this guy asked him, he was an Indian guy, he asked him, "Boss, ye kyun idhar? Why did you park at the beginning at the gate only? हमको चल के आना पड़ा पूरा." Okay. तो he says, नहीं, actually क्या है ना, जो बंदा सबसे लेट में आएगा, अगर जो उसको पार्किंग सबसे पास में मिली, तो he will not waste time. You know. So I think those kind of ideas start coming onto the table when you're doing design thinking. You know, behaviors. Okay. Impact. Okay, at Lemon especially, what we look at is 3 things: intent of making anything, which is intangible. Okay, you know, the why. Okay, then the number 2 is the purpose of making it, which is the tangible benefit or usage it applies to. in my mind, in my
So
life.
this kind of answers, a lot of times we are told that jewelry suffers in comparison to, phones and technology and accessories because there's no utility. We get often jewelers get slammed that your product has no utility. Husbands will tell us, listen, I'm buying this for my wife, but I don't know what the use is besides, parking money in some gold and diamonds or gemstones. So when you're saying that you're designing for a way of life or a culture or of sorts, there is some intangible or unexplainable utility to jewelry, right?
Yeah. There's an innate benefit, there's an intrinsic benefit of value that comes to me. अरे देखो ये, and एक उसका physical value भी है. एक
Yes.
intrinsic, intangible value, एक physical value है. But we can't stop at that. The third that we always measure is impact. Impact on environment, impact on society, and impact on economics.
Would it be fair to say that the jewelry industry can actually use recycling and sustainability as can we project ourselves? I know we can project ourselves as an industry that can recycle, obviously, because we can take old product and make it new. But are we in any way able to market ourselves as a sustainable industry? I mean, are we sustainable in our processes?
I think if you just switch to we do packaging, we do stores, we do so many things in jewelry. Okay.
Yeah.
I think if we just make the more sort of better for the world choice, better for the planet choices, they may be expensive, but if we all take this thing, those things will become cheaper than the chlorinated and bleached papers. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's just that where we cannot use paper, can we, instead of can we give a jewelry box in which they can keep other jewelry? ऐसी चीजें. Can we extend ourselves out and become beyond just packaging and become objects of utility that he keeps or she keeps in her house and tijori?
Correct.
तो हर चीज का एक यूज होना चाहिए, नहीं तो नहीं बनना चाहिए. एक एक्चुअल उसमें का फायदा होना चाहिए और वैल्यू क्रिएट होनी चाहिए, वरना नहीं बनना चाहिए. जस्ट मैनुअल shouldn't be made, it should be sent on PDF.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
A warranty card shouldn't be made. You have enough digital tech to authenticate a person today. Come on, why do you want to spend that one plastic card?
Yeah.
If we just हम अपनी खुद के घर की और ऑफिस की सफाई कर लेंगे ना, कि कहाँ हम extravagant हो रहे हैं, कहाँ हम wasteful हो रहे हैं. What all do we throw away? We do this amazing sort of summit and everything with the UN on pollution as a resource and waste as a resource. Chinese are making diamonds out of pollution. Why isn't the Indian jewelry community doing that? Every Choraha in Bombay and Pune and Delhi, why can't it have these towers that make diamonds out of carbon, air coagulants and air this thing?
Yeah, that's a controversial discussion about making diamonds out of carbon. But there's a question that we have. We're not left with too much time, but the question we have is, who is your favorite jewelry designer or jewelry brand?
Wow.
And for what reason?
You shouldn't have asked me that.
Yeah, I know. You shouldn't have mentioned carbon-produced diamonds, but yeah, anyway.
No, I was talking about those compressed carbon diamonds that they're using for industrial cutting, not Carbon the brand.
Yeah.
No. So I'm not going to answer that, Milan. This is not fair. But I do respect a lot of watch brands, okay, because they've taken jewelry to a different level. I think it's no longer remains jewelry. It becomes, I think, I'm not much of I wear jewelry. This is the only jewelry I wear. But then I like to keep it very simple, but I mean, I can't opine for others. Let everyone, to each one himself. And I like either something that's very functional or just something that just makes me feel who I am. So I'm actually not a very I'm not going to answer that question. It's a very wrong question for me.
No, I mean only even at an aesthetic
But
level.
I
There's
do
something that you
follow a
look
lot
at.
of Cartier. I do follow a lot of brands that I respect a lot for what they do. And I think I don't look at it just as jewelry, but I look at it as these guys do a lot of accessories. I think, I think that's another area where jewelers can really look at accessorizing, with
Yeah.
leather bags. How can you create this cross pollination of, can you tie up with a bag manufacturer, local bag manufacturer, and put
Yeah,
in
yeah,
preciousness in that? Can you do that with apparel makers? Because jewelry, fashion, they're all sibling industry. They can work with each other. They don't have to be so siloed.
yeah. Okay. So
Somebody
sorry.
has just said that the word sustainability is loosely used these days. Real responsible sustainability is expensive and most people aren't ready to pay for it. Okay, but I think it's this sort of threshold it needs to cross, and we need to push it, because that's the losing argument. you know uh, the thing is, it has to be done for it, because the cost is the environment, the cost is climate, the cost is livelihoods and disparity. Now, whether that's big enough a cost or not, that is a very subjective sort of a thing, and that's a very long debate. But I feel
Yeah,
sustainability is worth it, hands down.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't want my kid to grow up in a planet where he's locked up for 1 month. Yeah, honestly.
2 months.
2 months. Oh my God.
2 months now. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I think we've covered a wide range of conversations. It's tough when you have a topic like this, and it's a very open discussion. So thanks, Bhavani, for always making time
My pleasure.
and
Thank you
speaking to
so much
us.
for having me.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah,
so
yeah.
much for
It's
having me.
always fantastic. And yeah, hopefully we'll see each other in person at some point in the near future.
Yeah.
In the near future. Dolly, is there any other questions that we may have missed out?
No, Milan bhai, you have roughly covered most of them. So
all right, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Bhavani.
Thank you, Dolly. Thank you, Raksha. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, guys.
guys.
Thanks,
See you.
guys.